Hi everyone. I am going to play with a little watercolor this afternoon. I thought I would film what I was doing. I'm going to do a resist technique using a China marker. My pan of Daniel Smith watercolors that I turned into a pan. I'm going to try out some vintage paper. I gessoed this piece, and then this piece I didn't gesso. So it's kind of soaking through, but we'll see how that turns out. And then just some scraps of watercolor paper that I had kind of lying around. I also grabbed out some kosher salt. It's a little bit thicker of a granule, and I'm going to use that to get some more resist techniques with the watercolor. So let's get started. This is a really fun technique. I've found a lot of ways, because I get kind of anxiety about drawing or painting, so I've kind of come up with a lot of different solutions to that, or it's a little more abstract and fun and freedom playing. I'm using this number 9 watercolor paintbrush. Sorry everyone. And I also grabbed out like some water jars, because I like to keep the water pretty clean. I did a little swatching of my colors, because I didn't want them to be super bright, so I ended up using quite a bit of the raw umber and incorporating that into the colors and getting kind of more of that vintage, sort of worn, weathered kind of color scheme. Watercolors do dry a lot. Like they dry more muted than they first appear. So like this one was my first attempt, and what I'm trying to get is just kind of this abstract garden feeling. And I'm doing that by going in first with my China marker as a resist technique, and I'm just doodling flowers. And you can look at something. I had a little book earlier, but really it doesn't really matter how this looks underneath. You're just going to be getting like the resist. So you know, just have fun with it. And if you want to look at flowers and draw them, that's fine, but I would just say go for it. You know, it's kind of fun because you can't really see what's happening on the page, and it's fun to see what resists and the kind of marks that you get. I am kind of varying my marks, so I'm doing smaller, medium, and then larger, a couple larger pieces in there. And that kind of helps when you're spreading your watercolor around to get that various marks. And go off the side also. That really helps, especially on these smaller pieces. But yeah, just have fun. I mean, this is freedom at its finest here. Composition doesn't really matter either. It's going to be more when you lay down your watercolor. You're going to be thinking more about that. You could work really monochrome with these and just kind of use 1 or 2 colors. But that's my first little marks. And you can kind of pick it up in the light. I think I'm going to put a few more little dots and stuff around in the middle of things. And then this, I like to use a lot of water with this, so you can't really get too much water going. And I'm going to start with the green and kind of the leaves. And I kind of use my paintbrush on the side. And really, again, don't think too much. Don't let that impair your freedom. So I'm just kind of randomly laying down the green for some leaves. And then I'm gonna go back in, and I'm also being mindful of like my palette and making sure that I'm getting enough of that raw umber in there to achieve the more vintage sort of colors. But again, lots of water. And you're just kind of making blobs for your petals and your leaves. So I'm going to go in and try and make this color, which was, I think, some Payne's Gray, a little bit of the raw umber, and then I think some and these go super fast, so just you know, work quickly. Okay, that went rogue, so I don't like that purple at all. That was a mistake, and I'm going to just blot it up with a paper towel. And I'll go back over it with Payne's Gray. So I like too when you touch into like close to another color, when it kind of bleeds into each other. That looks really pretty. Okay, I'm gonna try and get that color. Okay, so I'm going to go back through a little bit with some more yellow. And then some raw umber again in that. Okay, now let's go back with some, this is Potter's Pink, I think, kind of mixed with some raw umber. I'll just add some little petals. So I'm going to go back and try and fill in some of these spaces a little. You got a little thunderstorm rolling through, so if you hear some thunder, that's what it is. We get that in Colorado about every afternoon up here in the mountains, and I love it. It just cools everything off. So I'm going to let that one kind of dry a little bit, and then I'm going to add some of the salt. Pull this one back so this one's drying. I think I'm going to add a good amount of salt to this and see. The trick with the salt is to kind of add it right as it's drying so it like separates the pigment. Let's do one more. So I always do this. I always break my little China marker. And I don't know what happened to the other bigger piece. I like China markers. You can use like an oil pastel or even a white crayon, like Crayola crayon. I like to use these because they're, you can get a little bit thinner line. And if you want a really thin line, I'm pushing pretty hard, but you could like really get this, you know, very, very fine line, which is fun. So we'll do on a piece of the vintage. My table's a little bit rough too, so I'm kind of getting that a little bit rougher, more of a rougher effect than I would like. So this is a gessoed piece of vintage book page, and I haven't tried the gesso yet to see how the watercolor looks on it, so that'll be kind of an experiment. Start with the red. So this is a really fun technique to do in your journal. I also just love having like just little pieces that I can incorporate into like collage work in my journal pages. So this is another practice that I'll do, just sitting down and creating just for the sake of creating. It clears my mind. I do it for stress relief. It's kind of a meditation for me. And I just love how they turn out. But they're great, like tags and lots of cool stuff that you can do with these. I'm kind of going back in where it's like very flat. Just adding a little bit more pigment to add some highlights and variations. I like the variations. And this really is a very intuitive process. So if you just kind of go with your gut, get some really cool results. And I like the way it's turning out on the gesso. It's not soaking into it as much, so it's kind of a neat look. And then I also like to just dip in and kind of add some little splatters. So we'll let that one dry. This is looking really neat. Let's do one more. I'm going to be a little more mindful of what side I'm working on and my flower placement. So the first one I did, I was looking at a book, and I like how I got kind of that more abstract, like dahlia looking. So I'm going to And I think on this one too, I think I did less marks. So I'm going to try that. Okay. Now I do notice that like my paints are getting a little muddy. And there's times that I do like that. But you can also just swipe everything off, or have like an extra little piece of paper that you just blob some abstract pigment on. And using clean water. I keep dipping into the dirty water. So that's super bright. I'm going to go back in with a little bit of the raw umber. Tone that down just a tad. So this time I did the petals first. Go back with a little green into those. And then I left more white space too, which I think I like a little better. And that would be a place that you could make some more marks, or you could coffee dye. So I think I'm gonna let this one be. And then I'm going to pull this one back that's a little dry, and I'm going to add salt to this. And then this piece is just about dry. Just going to see if I can show. You can kind of see the various marks with the salt, you know, it kind of spreads it out, but they turned out really pretty. So yeah, that's how I do it. So it's a real simple technique with the China marker and your watercolors, and have fun with it. Try different color stories, and I'll come back and kind of show you when these are dry, because they look so much different. But thanks for joining me today and watching me work, and I hope to see you again soon.